What's up, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Wrestling with Johners. This is episode 60. Yes, we've made it to 60 episodes of the Wrestling with Johners podcast, and this week we'll be discussing our usual NXT and NXT UK recap. I've got a special guest host with us this week who I'll be introducing very, very soon. We're also going to be looking at NXT being one of our favourite themes going to the USA Network. So it will be moving kind of from the WWE Network. We'll talk more about that and going to more of a mainstream network in America. So all of the pros and cons and all the information that we know of so far regarding NXT going to USA Network. But before all of that, just want to throw out my usual plugs for where you can find me on social media. If you're on Twitter, look out for us on Twitter. We are at @withjohners_pod. If you're on Instagram, go and find us on Instagram, instagram.com/wrestlingwithjohners, where you can find all of our daily posts there. And our Facebook group, go onto Facebook, search Wrestling with Johners and look for our very interactive, very fun and interesting social page that we've got on Facebook. Just search Wrestling with Johners there. And of course, if you enjoy listening to this podcast, please don't forget to hit like, subscribe, share, and shout about the Wrestling with Johners podcast. This is the only podcast for all of your NXT and NXT UK needs. We talk about WWE. We cover WWE pay-per-views and all of the news from the WWE, of course, and promotions from all over the world. So if you like your wrestling, you're going to love the Wrestling with Johners podcast. So listen to us each and every week. And please don't forget to spread the word, tell your friends and tell your family, and help to grow this podcast so that we can continue producing quality content for you each and every week. So without further ado, I want to introduce our guest host for this week. So for those of you that are part of our Wrestling with Johners Facebook community page, you've probably seen posts from Ashleigh, our guest host, and I want to introduce Ashleigh Clements onto the Wrestling with Johners podcast this week. Ashleigh, hi, good evening, how are you, buddy?
Hello there, John. Very good there.
Yeah, great to have you on board. This is your podcast debut, so nothing to be worried about, but we welcome Ashleigh on board and part of the Wrestling with Johners team from now on. So I should imagine that we'll be hearing a lot more from Ashleigh in future episodes, but Ashleigh's going to help us cover NXT, NXT UK. We'll have a little look at the TakeOver Cardiff card a little later on, and of course we're going to be talking a bit about NXT moving to the USA Network very, very soon. Just to recap on some special episodes that we've got coming up on the Wrestling with Johners podcast very, very soon. So next Friday, which I believe is the 30th of August, I'll have Kieran Reid back on the show, where we'll be covering and recapping the usual NXT and NXT UK like we do every single week. But it will be the day before NXT UK TakeOver Cardiff. So it'll be a special preview show covering the TakeOver Cardiff card in more detail, talking about the matches and basically just previewing how the TakeOver Cardiff card is looking. Bit of a go-home episode off the back of next week's NXT UK show. On this Saturday, I will be in Cardiff watching NXT UK TakeOver. And I think Ashleigh and Kieran are both going to be there. So I'm hoping to meet up with them too and have a bit of a catch up. But I'll be watching TakeOver Cardiff in person in Cardiff on Saturday the 31st. And on the 1st of September, I'll be reviewing the entire show from Cardiff with David Anderson, a long-time listener and fan and friend of the podcast, who's been on the podcast many times before. And on Sunday the 1st, me and David would be covering TakeOver Cardiff, a full review on Sunday. On Monday the 2nd, I'll be joined by Ash Crawford and Chris Thornton as we cover AEW's second pay-per-view, All Out. And All Out takes place on Saturday night, Sunday morning if you're in the UK, and we'll be covering it on Monday the 2nd of September. So plenty of big episodes of Wrestling with Johners to look forward to. But we are back with Ashleigh. So, Ashleigh, thanks again for helping us today. Because you're fairly new to the podcast, you've not done a podcast before, you've not been on the Wrestling with Johners show before. I want to know a little bit more about you and your kind of love for professional wrestling. So tell me how you first came across professional wrestling. Who introduced you to professional wrestling, whether it be as a child or as a teenager? So how did you first come across professional wrestling? Who introduced you to this great sport that you love then, Ashleigh?
Well, it was quite a weird one, really. I have a vivid memory. It was about, I think, New Year's of '99. I was around a friend's house at a party and went just crossing. moving across the house, someone had the TV on, as I spotted in the corner of my eye, the wrestling was on.
Yeah.
Trying to figure out what was this going on. And I think I have a vivid memory of the infamous pink slip on the pole match between The Rock and Mankind.
Yeah.
It was just mainly that. Then I think I had school friends. I can't remember who roughly intrigued me into it, but told me have a look at this. Then it was basically at the time during, say, the peak era of the Attitude Era, 2000, early 2000s, around January time. So it's obviously watching Raw on a Friday night. Then you would watch SmackDown at the old days at 10 o'clock on the Sky One on a Saturday morning.
Yes, I remember. Yeah, and so you were introduced at quite a pivotal time in wrestling history, really, kind of the Attitude Era, like I say, around 99 and 2000. The WWE, or WWF as it probably was back then, was a really hot time. A lot of big names getting over. Obviously, Triple H was just becoming world champion around then. Obviously, The Rock was in his prime. You obviously had Steve Austin still in his prime around 99, 2000 as well. But the Attitude Era was in its full swing, and probably the last year or so of WCW. So I think by then the WWF had probably already won the Monday Night Wars, and things were looking fairly bleak for them, but very positive for the WWF. So who were some of your favourite wrestlers back then, and who have you grown up kind of enjoying as far as professional wrestlers are concerned? Who's been your favourite standout wrestlers over the years then, Ashleigh, would you say?
So from when I first started, it was like Triple H was the main draw for me at the time. It was literally someone who's, well, not cocky, arrogant heel, but he was someone who's delivered over time.
Yeah.
And I think mainly the matches he had with Mick Foley was Cactus Jack in the Street Fight Royal Rumble, then having the Hell in a Cell match month after.
Yeah.
Literally cemented him as the top dominant heel of the year. Then
Most
also,
yeah.
Someone else that really caught my eye also was Kurt Angle. There's someone who was obviously being an amateur from '96, winning the gold medal, breaking neck and neck, and taken into pro wrestling from debut, was it Survivor Series '99? Then within a year winning the world title. And someone to pick it up that quick is quite impressive.
Definitely, yeah. So you mentioned some big names there, but you still follow wrestling avidly now, and I think one of the things that stand out about me and looking at you on social media is you go to a lot of indie shows, predominantly Progress. So you're a big Progress wrestling fan, and you watch a lot of their chapters, a lot of their live shows. So tell us about how you got into Progress, when you first started watching them, and what sort of venues have you seen them in?
So I got into Progress around September of last year. A couple of friends I went to an English show for IPW Milton Keynes, and that shows there, recommended, we should go definitely check out a Progress show. So I said, okay. And ironically enough, I was in London doing a charity event on the day they were doing their big Wembley show last year.
Yeah. And
I've been to shows ever since. They're the only show I've missed I've only missed 2 shows in London so far since I've been going, from Chapter 76, which was Hello Wembley, which was on Boxing of last year, and their June show this year.
Yeah. And did you manage to go to Hello Wembley? Because that was one hell of a show. I'm sure that you've seen it on demand. If you didn't, was you there in person?
Yeah, I was there in person. Yeah, because when I did my charity event, it finished. I think we finished it roughly about 2 o'clock. And I had to get across from, I'm trying to think where we were now, it was Bank, roughly around the Bank area of London.
Yeah.
Trying to get to Wembley, there were quite a fair few tube lines close. I have to get on, try to get connecting lines and Jubilee lines, the only clear lines to get to Wembley.
Yeah, fun and games. So you would have seen a main event featuring 2 people that we're going to be talking about a lot later on. So the main event for Hello Wembley last August was for the Progress World title, Walter versus Tyler Bate. And, coincidentally, that's going to be the main event of NXT UK TakeOver Cardiff. That was one hell of a battle between Walter and Tyler Bate in that main event at Wembley Arena last summer. What are your memories from that show, and what are your memories from that main event in particular?
Memories from that show have first off, it's been built as Riddle's last independent show, but obviously he's now going to be at Progress's big September show with Keith Lee next month. teaming up against Mustache Mountain of Tyler Bate and Trent Seven. You also had, Trent also beat Doug Williams for the Progress Atlas title, which had to force Doug Williams into retirement.
That's right.
You had the European Dream match of Ilya Dragunov versus Pete Dunne, which was the first instance I had into Dragunov, and someone I've heard of, but I've never seen much of wrestling.
Yeah, well, I don't think many people had it at that point. I think that his match against Pete Dunne at Wembley was kind of a lot of people's introduction to Ilya Dragunov, and now, of course, a lot of people are more familiar with Dragunov, with him being part of the NXT UK brand. But that was the first time I'd come across him, to be honest with you, was when I saw him against Pete Dunne in that match at Wembley. But carry on.
Yeah, I think there was also, I've heard reports that there was a match either that year or the previous year he had with Walter, which he beat well, because he's got probably one of the best records against Walter in anyone's career. I think he's won 3 and only lost 2.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know that they fought quite a few times in Germany for the WXW brand, so that's probably where they've had a lot of their matches. But and there was probably the match of the night, or one of the matches of the night, was Mark Andrews versus Eddie Dennis, and it was a bit of a street fight, bit of a anything goes sort of match, and there was some pretty amazing spots that did the round on the internet afterwards. Certainly that body slam off the ladder through the table it certainly sticks out in my memory.
That match was brutal to watch. Numerous times I was going through my head, even people behind me was actually going, I pray the guys go through a table. I please pray for the guys. When the first bump they didn't go through a table, I thought, okay. Then the next one didn't happen. Then again, you think, oh God, is this going to happen? But it was just a weird TLC match where you think, oh, they're going to go through. Well, they're going to use all these gimmicks and go through it.
Yeah.
But not to happen. But the biggest pop of the match is when Eddie Dennis hits his finisher, puts Mark Andrews through the table from the top of the ladder, then goes up the ladder and grabs his contract for an open title match. But now Eddie's now done with Progress, so that's out of the window now. They need to use that now.
Yeah, that was a real shame. I would have loved to have seen Eddie Dennis to kind of cash in his opportunity for the Progress World title. Would love to have seen him go up against Walter, and that opportunity never happened. And once again, injury kind of played its hand in Eddie Dennis's opportunities there. But we've seen him do the odd kind of promo, his recovery from his latest injury. I think it's a shoulder tear or something like that. And, I'm not too sure if it was pectoral. It was definitely either shoulder or pectoral muscle. Because he did the opposite one. He did the opposite one in 2018. So he had surgery. Just a similar time layoff he had to have. Yeah, that's right. But can't wait for him to come back and show what he's capable of doing on the NXT UK brand. And I got a feeling that when he comes back, he could be coming back as a babyface. I think that he's got a good opportunity to come back as a babyface there. But what do you think?
Potentially, but I think the only way he's been built so far in NXT UK, he's been built as a heel. So it's hard to say. Normally, when you have people go off and lay off for injury, when they come back, the most interesting one I can think of is Triple H when he first tear his quad. He had that build up. The video package he had roughly around Vengeance in 2001. The week they debuted back in Madison Square Garden, and he was face. But then by the lead up to SummerSlam 2002, he turns to Shawn Michaels and turned back heel.
There we go. But I'm just kind of imagining the pop he's going to get when he comes out unexpectedly, possibly at TakeOver Cardiff, my friend. And it wouldn't surprise me, with him being from South Wales, for him to make an appearance of some description. Probably not a physical appearance, because I don't think he'll be up for any physical altercations. You never know. But I reckon he'll make an appearance next Saturday night.
He definitely make some form of appearance. I think he is medically cleared at push, because he did say when he made his farewell appearance Progress that he is medically cleared, but it's just getting down to the final details of how much he can and can't do in the ring as such.
Yeah, well, I've now that you've said that, I've kind of got a bit of an inkling as far as what capacity we might see Eddie Dennis in, but I'm not going to spoil my thoughts now. I might kind of keep it until next Friday's episode with Kieran and let you know where I think Eddie Dennis might kind of come into it. But there we go. Moving on then, Ashleigh. Let's talk about NXT a little bit. And there's been rumblings over the last few weeks that NXT was going to move into a 2-hour show, a live show. First of all, it was expected that NXT might be going to a different network, possibly FS1, which is like a sports channel, a subsidiary of the Fox network in America. And of course, Fox has picked up SmackDown, and they'll be showing SmackDown from October on Friday nights in a huge money-making deal for the WWE. And of course, Monday Night Raw starts its new contract with the USA Network later on this autumn as well. So kind of two big money-making deals there for both Raw and SmackDown. So the rumour was that NXT was going to be going to FS1 to start off with. But that didn't happen, and kind of almost out of the blue, it was announced that NXT will be going to the USA Network. Now, as I've already mentioned, the USA Network already is the home of Monday Night Raw, and NXT will be shown on the USA Network on Wednesday nights, starting from the 18th of September. Now, the changes that we're aware of are that NXT is going to be going from a 1-hour pre-recorded taped show to a 2-hour live show every single week from 8 until 10 on Wednesdays. And that, coincidentally, is going to be exactly the same time slot as AEW's TV show, Wednesday Night Dynamite, 8 till 10 every Wednesday on the TNT network. So, first of all, what were your thoughts when you heard that NXT was going to be going from 1 hour to 2 hours and from pre-recorded to live? What were your thoughts when you first heard that? Was you kind of a little bit sceptical? Was you excited by the news? What were your initial thoughts, Ashleigh?
It's kind of 50-50, really. It's quite excited for, obviously, it's getting the big brand, obviously, out to a wider audience. Obviously, NXT is just usually just on the network, so obviously you'll have the occasional viewers come onto it from, well, the American side of it. It's just using to see if, also debuting new talent as well. It's like getting them across, get new eyes onto those characters, and obviously try and build storylines with those people. The only thing I can think of, well, could be negative or positive for it is obviously if it's a Vince idea, obviously he'd try to stop it from being pre-recorded in case, like the whole thing during Monday Night Wars was. Eric Bischoff used to spoil outcomes of pre-taped Raws.
That's right.
That might be a help for them, obviously, because obviously if they're going live, it stops the competition trying to spoil results that might happen on their show, so people don't want to view it.
Yeah. I think that the general vibe from the wrestling community online was that 2 hours might be too much. We've always been kind of, I think one of the big pluses and one of the big positives to NXT has always been that 1 hour is quite manageable. It's a good length, so it keeps you wanting to come back and have more the next week, keeps you wanting to come back for more. Where 2 hours, it could potentially be 1 hour too much. But my thoughts were that the second hour could give NXT's roster, it's quite a large roster on the NXT brand, more of them an opportunity to get TV time, to make more of the name for themselves. And we've just seen the NXT breakout tournament with 8 new individuals that have just been signed to the NXT brand, get a little bit of an opportunity to get some exposure on TV, on the NXT TV show, of course, and it will give individuals like that and others that you don't see very often an opportunity to get some TV time and maybe more storylines as well. My fear is that they might use this opportunity for a second hour to maybe get some main roster talent on the show, which I don't think is really what the fans of NXT want, to be honest with you. They want it to be a separate brand. And I think the biggest fear with it going on such a big network like the USA Network is that there's going to be that temptation of Vince McMahon and Kevin Dunn getting involved and tinkering with the NXT products. Now, ever since NXT became kind of the brand, the products that we love so much for the last 5 or 6 years now, it's always been Triple H at the helm with his Full Sail crew. Do you think there's a chance that Vince McMahon and Kevin Dunn and the guys that kind of control the main roster might want to tinker with the NXT brand once it goes to the USA Network?
I don't overly think so as much. I think this has been Triple H's little pet project over the past 5 to 6 years. And I think he'll try still keep the reins on it. He might listen to ideas from Vince, but I think he'll have the overall say on it. And also, this with the XFL starting next year, it might have Vince away from it as well. So obviously, Vince is looking forward to build that up more than NXT really on the USA. But I overly think Triple H will be solely in control. He might have, he's got his crew there who would help him. I think he's got a diverse selection on his panel. He will guide him on what decisions to do. But I think overall, what he's been doing has been top notch.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, to be honest with you. I think that's absolutely fantastic. And I do hope what you're saying actually plays out. I mean, I do think in order for NXT to continue being as popular as it has been, as it always has been, I think that the thing with NXT is it's got the cool factor. It's got the cool factor because it's got wrestlers that are allowed to be themselves, to wrestle their own style, not without too many limitations, and storylines are allowed to play out properly with a beginning, a middle, and an end. And I think that's what people have always loved about the NXT product. It feels more real. It feels like a proper wrestling company. And like I say, it has that cool factor, which is what all wrestling fans have enjoyed about it so much. I think once you get kind of the big bosses tinkering and getting involved, it will lose its cool factor and may not be as popular. And that could be to its detriment. And I really hope that Vince McMahon trusts Triple H and his team that usually do the NXT shows at Full Sail and the takeovers to do what they've always done very, very well. But there's always going to be that temptation, I think, if NXT does become popular. You never know, Vince McMahon might want to tinker with it, but as you quite rightly said, he has the XFL in mind, and the XFL starts, I think, early 2020. So that's going to be his pet project that will hopefully keep him distracted and hopefully keep him away from tinkering too much or at all from the NXT brand. So it's all very exciting now. AEW have their Wednesday Night Dynamite show, and that starts on the 2nd of October this year. So NXT goes to the USA Network and to their 2-hour live show on the 18th of September. So they're going to have a couple of weeks head start on Wednesday Night Dynamite, hopefully to build a bit of an audience and to get their name out there and to have that little bit of familiarity before the AEW brand starts their weekly show. So they have the jump on AEW essentially. So hopefully the transition from 1 hour to 2 hours and from pre-recorded to live won't hinder the NXT brand. And my hope is that it will give the roster, quite a large roster of NXT talent, an opportunity to get some TV time and to make names for themselves. What's your thoughts on NXT being the direct competition to AEW? Because when AEW were first launched, it was seen as AEW versus WWE. Now it seems that NXT are going to be the competition for AEW. Now, if you look at it, they've both got very similar rosters when you look at it, both with rosters with some established names, with some household names, but still quite a developing talent roster between the two brands. So they both kind of match up quite similar to one another, in my opinion. But how do you think this kind of Wednesday night war could materialise between NXT and AEW? How do you think that could play out then, Ashleigh?
I overly think it could play off. I think it seems going to have All Out next week. Possibly, because obviously they'll have to build up from their pay-per-view next week, and hopefully what happens to that might draw eyes to their product more than go to them NXT mainly. But overall, I felt when AEW was set up, their main competition was NXT, not WWE as such, as most of the people who watch have network subscribe mainly for NXT, because that's where they enjoy most of their wrestling from the WWE brand as such.
Yeah. No, good point. So I, for one, am looking forward to it. And for those of you that are concerned that you might not get an opportunity to see NXT every single week like you do currently, the good news is that it will remain on the WWE Network. However, it won't be playing out on a Wednesday evening. It will be playing out on a Thursday evening. So it will be shown on the network 24 hours later. So certainly for those of us that live outside of North America, in the UK, such as myself and Ashleigh, we'll get to see NXT every Thursday night. Or, I think with the time difference, we'll probably have a better chance of watching it on Fridays, of course. But fear not, it will still be played out on the WWE Network every single week, but just with a 24-hour delay. So I'm been trying to figure out in my own head over the last couple of days how that might impact the Wrestling with Johners podcast, because quite often I do record on a Thursday night, having watched NXT and NXT UK kind of the previous evening or that morning. And now it means that the Wrestling with Johners podcast, which focuses quite a lot on the NXT product, might be more frequently either on Friday nights or possibly Saturdays once we've had a chance to watch it and catch up with the product. So that 24-hour delay could have a small impact on the podcast, but not a huge one. But let's have a little look at NXT UK from this week then, Ashleigh. So you've got some notes there, but it was quite an entertaining hour of wrestling. And although NXT will be going to 2 hours, NXT UK should remain at just one, which makes it still the kind of manageable bite-sized hour that we all love and enjoy. But this week's episode of NXT UK opened with a match, The Hunt versus Imperium. So Imperium made up of Eichner and Bartel, of course. So this was a very competitive match between these two teams, with both teams getting their fair share of action. At one point, the Hunt looked as though they were going to pinch the match. They were going to steal the match. There were some close near falls for both teams, but certainly the Hunt looked as if they were in the hunt for winning the match at one point. However, after stereo drop kicks from Eichner and Bartel, they managed to get Wild Boar up for the powerbomb flying European uppercut combo for the 1-2-3 pinfall victory. And the combination of Eichner and Bartel, Imperium won the match against a very spirited effort from the Hunt, Primate and Wild Boar. So this was a really fun opening match to kick off this week's NXT UK, with Imperium working hard. They did have to work hard for their victory. Ashleigh, what did you think of this opening match on this week's NXT UK?
I think it was a very solid match. There was one point in the match which just bizarred me. Wild Boar had, I think it was Eichner at the time. He had him in a bin kind of elbow tighter, but he was biting his ear, which you wouldn't really associate with a face. Yeah, really doing a heel kind of tactic. I thought, okay, that's just a bit weird. Just thought it's just a little something he just might try from his character. It was a solid match. It built up three good offense from both teams, and teamwork by Imperium was top notch, working on each member individually and getting up the win in the end. But I thought, how would this do in the future if they would pursue, if they want to be the dominant wind force and be in NXT UK, let's propel them up to being tag team title scene.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me after Takeover Cardiff to see Imperium possibly in with a shout against whoever comes out of Cardiff as the tag team champions. So I've got my theory on what might happen and how Imperium might potentially be in a tag title contendership after Cardiff, but I think they definitely deserve a shot at the bouts at some point, but because the current champions are heels, they're not necessarily going to have Imperium go up against the grizzled young veterans until after the dust has settled from Cardiff, so we shall see. But you're quite right. I think Imperium, Eichner and Bartel make an excellent team, and their tandem offense, their double team maneuvers are always very, very impressive. They do work together like a well-oiled team. But another victory for the Imperium duo, and of course they haven't got a match at Cardiff, so it'll be interesting to see what role they play in Cardiff next Saturday night. But after the match, Sid Scala then formally announces that Noam Dar will indeed get a match at TakeOver Cardiff, and he will face Travis Banks, who had his opportunity at TakeOver Blackpool taken away from him, and he was replaced in a match against Jordan Devlin with Finn Balor, of course, you may remember. But Travis Banks will be going up against Noam Dar. It's made official by Sid Scala for NXT UK TakeOver Cardiff in just 1 week's time. Speaking of Imperium, then there's a backstage footage of one of the members of Imperium getting attacked. I can't remember which one it was to start off with.
I think it was Fabian Knight, because he went into the dressing room. He got attacked by the mysterious assailant, who will be revealed later.
Yeah.
And then the mysterious assailant came out and attacked Bartel before he entered the locker room.
Yes, so I know that each member of Imperium kind of got picked off throughout the night by this mystery attacker, and we'll find out who that is a little bit later on. Then we go into match number 2, Kaylee Ray versus Shax. So Shax, I think, recently had a tryout when the WWE or NXT were over in the UK. I'm not sure if she's been signed or not, but she certainly got her NXT UK debut against the number one contender to Toni Storm's championship, Kaylee Ray. So this is Shax's NXT UK debut, as I mentioned. However, she's definitely building a name for herself on the indie scene. Is she a wrestler that you've seen at any indie shows, Ashleigh? Are you familiar with Shax?
No, not really. I've heard the name spread about, and there's a couple of people I follow on social media who praised her over the past day on social media with her debut and that. But I've not really seen her, because I think she's mainly competes in the northern area, so I think she's billed from Sheffield, so I think it's kind of that area she's predominantly wrestles in.
So maybe our listener and occasional guest host Dan Grantham might have seen her, because he watches Breed up in Sheffield, so maybe she's kind of wrestled on some of their shows. But in this match, Kaylee Ray definitely appears to be intent on sending out a clear message to the current champion Toni Storm. Shax gets a surprise 2 count, however, from a roll-up, but Kaylee Ray rewards Shax's effort with a wicked clothesline and an overhand slap. Kaylee Ray connects with a stunning crescent kick to the jaw of Shax before getting the pinfall with an impressive gory bomb. So Kaylee Ray, I think, pound for pound, is probably the best women's wrestler, certainly in the UK, if not across Europe, and certainly one of the best in the world, in my opinion. I think that her match against Toni Storm next Saturday is going to be, if I'm honest with you, it's probably the match that I'm looking forward to the most. But after the match, Kaylee Ray gets on the microphone. She has known Toni for a long time, and she wants you all to know what a weak and a fragile individual she is, and she will take the one thing that means the most to her NXT UK Women's Championship. Just then, Toni Storm makes her entrance. Kaylee Ray says that she was Toni Storm's best friend at one point and for many years, and Toni is the reason they don't talk anymore. Toni is the reason none of her friends or family members don't talk to her anymore, and she was the reason why her own father walked away and abandoned her as a little girl. Just then, Toni snaps, as you would expect, and drops Kaylee Ray, with the challenger to the Women's Championship obviously getting into Toni's head and under her skin after that vicious and hard-to-hear war of words from KLR, adding yet more fuel to the fire in the lead-up to their match in Cardiff. As if you need any more reason to be excited for this match. What did you think of Kaylee Ray's kind of mic work after this match, and some of the kind of quite cutting remarks that she had for Toni Storm after her match and after a win against Shax? What's your thoughts then, Ashleigh?
I think it was a very good promo. He's using their strengths well there. Because Toni, it's best, I think, Toni not to respond verbally, because I feel she's not the most confident on mic yet. The crowds as well was just a bit off, I think, for this being episode in general. I'll bring up another point later on. But you could also see when you watch it how it looks like Toni was trying to hold back tears when Kaylee Ray was laying into her with her words.
Yeah, it certainly was some cutting remarks. But I thought that Kaylee Ray was excellent on the microphone here. I mean, you mentioned that Toni Storm, her strengths aren't necessarily her mic work or her promo ability. She's much better as an in-ring competitor, not necessarily her promo skills. But Kaylee Ray seems to have her mic work and her promo work in the ring down to a fine art. So I was really impressed with the way that Kaylee Ray managed to kind of add an extra level of intrigue and excitement as we lead into their championship match next Saturday in Cardiff. Then Jordan Devlin has been interviewed backstage by Radsey, asking why he's not on the card for TakeOver Cardiff, when the lucky un, Kenny Williams, approaches Devlin, saying that if Jordan didn't spend his time moaning as much, then he might find himself on the TakeOver card. This leads to Williams challenging Devlin to a match on next week's NXT UK, saying that he will show him that he will be lucky enough to bet against the Irish Ace. So that's a pretty good match. Personally, I'm quite disappointed that Jordan Devlin isn't going to be wrestling on TakeOver Cardiff. But what's your thoughts on Jordan Devlin and his match with Kenny Williams next week?
I think it should be an interesting match. It's obviously different contrast of styles. Obviously, both are known for having like high flying abilities. From both Devlin, obviously, Manny's a round and pound guy really, but Kenny Williams is more of an aerial kind of challenger.
Yeah,
I think they could work well, but it's a hard one to say without even know how the match will go. But with Devlin himself, I feel very unharsh on him not being on the card for TakeOver next week.
Yeah. I've got a sneaking suspicion that we'll probably see Jordan Devlin in Cardiff one way, shape or form. And it wouldn't surprise me if he's on the undercard. I know there's going to be a couple of dark matches, which will obviously be featured on the next week's episode of NXT UK, I should imagine, after TakeOver Cardiff. But so we'll see how that match plays out when Jordan Devlin takes on Kenny Williams next week on NXT UK. And obviously, these episodes of NXT UK were filmed a few weeks ago in Plymouth at the Plymouth Pavilion as part of their TV tapings. So we shall see how that match plays out on next week's episode. And of course, we'll be covering it right here on the podcast. Then we go to our next match. Mark Andrews versus James Drake. Now, this match will give Mark Andrews a chance to earn himself and Flash Morgan Webster, his tag team partner, a shot at the tag team championships against the Grizzled Young Veterans in a possible three-way match against GYV and Gallus in Cardiff. Of course, Morgan Webster won in his match against Mark Coffey last week. And this week, it's Mark Andrews' chance to put their team one step closer to that possible three-way in Cardiff. So Mark Andrews gets a close near fall from a standing moonsault on Mr. Mayhem. Drake gets a 2 count of his own from a drop kick to the face of Andrews in the centre of the ring. Drake then gets another 2 count after 2 vicious backbreakers. There's plenty of amusing chants towards James Drake and Zach Gibson in this match, like you hear most weeks on NXT UK when these two are on screen. Mark Andrews then hits an enziguri, knocking Drake out of the ring, which Andrews follows up with a dive through the ropes onto his opponent on the outside. There's an impressive spot with James Drake hoisting Andrews onto his shoulders, only for Andrews to reverse the hold into a wicked DDT. Just then, as Andrews is about to ascend to the top, he's distracted by Zach Gibson on the outside, only to be caught with a running drop kick from James Drake. Then, from out of nowhere, Andrews connects with a spiked reverse Rana on James Drake, but before Andrews could capitalise on the move, we then get Wolfgang and Mark Coffey come down to the ringside to get involved in a war of words with Zach Gibson on the outside. Also distracting James Drake, who is dropped with a surprising stun dog millionaire, and Mark Andrews hooks the leg and gets the 1, 2, 3. So it looks like Gallus's involvement on the outside distracted the Grizzled Young Veterans, leading to James Drake's roll-up. Well, it was a stun dog millionaire and surprise victory from Mark Andrews. Ashleigh, this was an excellent fast-paced match, and this was kind of the main event match for this week's NXT UK, with Mark Andrews pulling out all the stops to defeat James Drake to get another step closer to that inevitable three-way tag match in Cardiff. What were your thoughts on this match? And what's your thoughts on kind of the 3 teams that could be involved for the tag team titles in Cardiff next Saturday night? I firmly believe that with their 2 victories, Flash Morgan last week and Mark Andrews this week, I feel that they are becoming legit contenders and possible, future tag team champions. And they seem to be building to an ultimate kind of like underdog story. And the underdog story could come to fruition in like a fairy tale ending in Cardiff. But what's your thoughts on kind of how this has all played out? It's been quite a clever storyline with how Mark Andrews and Flash Morgan Webster have been able to fight their way into a three-way match in Cardiff. But so give us your thoughts on all of this then.
I really enjoyed this match. It was my match of the night of the whole show. As I pointed out earlier, there's like weird chanting from the crowds. There's like 3 points in the match where they were just chanting at Gibson, even though he wasn't in the match. You could even see at one point on his face, he was like, "What the hell are you doing? Focus on being talent in the ring." Yeah, there was good chemistry between the two. They've worked before together. Saw them live. I think they were in a 34-way match together on 205 when they was in London back in May. Gallagher's coming out was just like, obviously causing distraction for being Andrews been hit the stunt on Millionaire and get the win. There's like there's one trait in wrestling you don't do with Mark Andrews. You don't go for a suplex on Mark Andrews. There's certain traits in wrestling you don't do on wrestlers, and that's one of them.
Yeah, definitely. So just as the match kind of comes to an end, we see Trent Seven, and he comes through the crowd and into the ring. So one of the features that we've been building up to in this week's NXT UK was a face-to-face meeting, a face-to-face confrontation between Walter, the current WWE UK champion, and former champion Tyler Bate, big strong boy, of course. And of course, we've had this mystery assailant, this mystery attacker, picking off members of Imperium throughout the night. He's taken out Marcel Bartel, he's taken out Fabian Eichner. But then Trent Seven gets into the ring. Just then Walter comes out and he's got Alexander Wolf behind him. And as Walter goes to kind of, confronts Trent Seven, who's kind of like jeering him on from inside the ring, Tyler Bate then picks off Alexander Wolf on the rampway with a steel chair. And then that gives Mustache Mountain, Trent Seven and Tyler Bate an opportunity to beat down Walter. And then eventually Tyler Bate beats down Walter even more with the steel chair before delivering his Tyler Driver 97, giving him all of the momentum as we get ever closer to that massive main event match in Cardiff next week for the WWE UK Championship. So I thought this was a really clever angle and a really clever storyline that they played throughout this episode. So from the beginning of the episode all the way through to the end, there was this mystery attacker, each member of Imperium getting picked off, culminating in Tyler Bates eventually hitting his Tyler Driver on the much bigger Walter. And at the end of the show, we saw Tyler Bates standing over Walter with the WWE UK Championship in his hand, held aloft, with Walter flat on his back in the middle of the ring. So a really impressive way to cap off this week's episode. What was your thoughts on this closing segment? The involvement of Trent Seven, Alexander Wolf, Tyler Bates, and Walter. Give us your thoughts.
When Trent came out originally, I thought, okay, obviously it's paying off the traits that he got written off by Imperium on the last episode of when it was at Download Festival. Obviously he's trying to been, you would have thought originally he was the man who attacked Marcel Bartel and Fabian Eichner backstage, but then obviously it's just a lure for Walter and Wolf to come out and have Bate to sneak up on Wolf and then help gang up on Walter and literally set up in pathway for him and Bate and Walter to have a clear one-on-one contest. So it's literally Bates trying to get rid of all the being associated with Imperium and try and make sure it's an even playing field going into that match.
Yeah, definitely. And, it's a fun tactic and a really fun storyline, like I said, that played out throughout the whole episode of NXT UK this week. So overall, I thought it was a really fun episode. We had a fun and hard-hitting match between the Hunt and Imperium to kick the show off, and I thought that was a very good opening match. Then we had a really good match between Mark Andrews and James Drake, not to mention the very stinging and kind of hard to hear promo from Kaylee Ray on Tony Storm, adding even more fuel to the fire to their match at TakeOver Cardiff. Then we saw Tyler Bate, as we just mentioned, pick off each member of Imperium throughout the night, leading to him eventually standing over Walter after hitting his Tyler Driver 97 with the UK bout aloft. So a really good episode of NXT UK. Have you always been a fan of NXT UK, Ashleigh? Have you kind of seen it from the very start on the WWE Network? How much of a fan are you of this show in particular?
Yeah, I've watched it since episode 1. I was also lucky enough to be at the inaugural start of NXT UK back at Royal Albert Hall last year. The first night at the UK tournament where Zach Gibson won. Then the second night, which was a crossover between NXT UK and NXT.
Right, very impressive. Yes, that's one show that I really am quite annoyed with myself that I missed out on last year because there was so much good action over them 2 nights. But I've spoken to people that were there and they said that it was fantastic. And of course, you were there as well, so you know how good it was. Let's have a quick look at the NXT UK Takeover Cardiff card as it stands. I think the main card is set. They usually only have 5 matches at takeovers like this, for example. Toni Storm versus Kaylee Ray. Now, these two have had many matches over the years. They've been best of friends, bitter enemies. They've had quite a strong storyline in NXT UK with Toni Storm being the current champion. Kaylee Ray's been a very, very dominant since she's come onto the brand a few months ago. What's your thoughts on this match at the moment? Toni Storm versus Kaylee Ray. Have you got a favourite? Can you pick a winner out of these two?
It's hard to say before going to see what happens next week, but overall I think it's literally a hard one to say. You could either go, it's 50-50 way I can see it going, but I see how dominant they've been pushing Kaylee Ray. I can see her picking up the title and dethroning Toni.
Yeah, it's going to be a really strong match, definitely. Then you've got what I think, I don't know if it's been 100% confirmed yet, but I believe it's going to be the triple threat for the NXT UK tag team titles. The current champions, the Grizzled Young Veterans, and they are the first ever and the only NXT UK tag team champions. They were crowned in a match against Mustache Mountain in NXT UK TakeOver Blackpool in January. They've held the championships ever since. They are going up against Gallus. That's going to be Mark Coffey and Wolfgang. And against Flash Morgan Webster and Mark Andrews as the third team. Who do you kind of favour in that? Do you see a title change happening? Do you think we could get a shock on the night, or do you think the Grizzled Young Veterans are going to hold on to their belts?
Just to confirm that match has been made official, because I think it's been made official over day of recording. It's been made official over social media. I've seen both, I think Mark Andrews and Flash Morgan Webster both post it on Twitter and their Instagram accounts as well.
Fantastic.
I can see Mark Andrews and Flash Morgan Webster come close in the match. They'll be going off the hometown crowd feeling. Obviously, try to get a big pop, good win feeling from the home crowd. But overall, I think I don't think you want to build Grizzly Young Veterans as your dominant team and not have them drop the belts, even though they've held it theoretically for 8 months after that kind of long time period.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. Yeah, I'm going to leave my predictions until next week, but then we got Joe Coffey. Now, Joe Coffey was in the main event of TakeOver Blackpool against Pete Dunne in what I still think is one of the matches of the year, to be honest with you. I know that there were instances during the match that people think were botched, but I just think it added to the drama and the intensity of that match, which I still love to this day. But Joe Coffey will be going up against Dave Mastiff. Now, Dave Mastiff went up against Eddie Dennis in Blackpool, but this match against Joe Coffey is going to be another kind of knockdown, drag out kind of. I don't know if it's been confirmed as a falls count anywhere, or is it a last man standing match?
Yeah, Johnny Saint confirmed. I think it was last week. It was last man standing. I think also there was a vignette as well this week, but for them leading into the match as well, confirming it was a last man standing match.
So I mean, I think between these two big, tough, hard hitting individuals, and I think you're going to get some action inside and outside of the ring, and there could be some weapons used as well. But I love Joe Coffey, I love Dave Mastiff. I think that's going to be a really hard hitting match, and it wouldn't surprise me if that one kicks off the show next Saturday night to get people kind of off to a really big start. So and then of course it was confirmed this week on NXT UK that Noam Dar will be going up against Travis Banks. What's your thoughts on Noam Dar versus Travis Banks? Have you got a favourite to win out of those two?
It's another one really. I can see another one that's not 50-50 booking. I can see why Trav should win, and also I can see why Noam should win. But overall, I think possibly Noam might win to build up this cocky, arrogant style who's come over from the States, from 205 Live. He's literally boasting about, I've got this lucrative contract to be on NXT UK. I can have this, I can have that. I can see him just literally just play off that and try to get him higher up the bit, or try to propel himself up of the card, try to get another shot at the NXT UK title.
Yeah, and it wouldn't surprise me if Noam Dar. I think that Noam Dar, I've become more of a fan of his heel personality over the last few weeks and months. Although I find him incredibly annoying, I think that kind of proves that he's doing his job as a heel very well. Because that he is, let's be honest, he's got a face that you just want to punch, and somebody that that you're gonna boo naturally, much like Zach Gibson. He is a proper out and out heel. So, but I think because of that, I think he's got more of a total package over Travis Banks. I think Travis Banks lacks in the personality department, in my opinion, but I wouldn't mind seeing Noam Dar go over in that match. And then you're on to your main event, Walter, the current WWE United Kingdom champion, against Tyler Bate. It's essentially a rematch from almost a year ago to the day when they fought each other at Progress Hello Wembley at Wembley Arena. How do you think that one's going to play out, and do you have a favourite?
I feel it could play out similar to their big match they had at Wembley for Progress. Two different contrasting styles. Obviously, you've got the big hard-hitting being Chops and Walter, and obviously you've got Tyler who try to use his speed and agility trying to get around him. But overall, I feel that Walter will overpower Tyler and win it. Won't say comfortably, but have a strong showing from Tyler where he'll get a couple close, very near pinfalls. But Walter will just literally just outpower him, outmaneuver him just to get the win.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be the ultimate David versus Goliath encounter, and that one's going to be. I think if they give them a good 25-30 minutes. That could be one of the matches of the year.
They can definitely go 30 minutes because their match for Progress went half an hour.
Yeah.
So they have got the ability to go at least half an hour.
Definitely. And I think the longer it goes, the more that could play to the advantage of Tyler Bate being the smaller, more agile guy. And I think the longer it goes, the bigger a chance that Tyler Bate will have to capture the championship. It's going to be a nail biter. That's all I can say. It's definitely going to be a nail biter, and it's going to have people on the edge of their seats and people standing to watch the match next Saturday night, and that's going to be an amazing main event. So we've briefly covered NXT UK Takeover Cardiff and the card of the matches that are going to be taking place next Saturday night. Let's move on to this week's NXT. So this is the first of the weekly tapings from the Full Sail tapings that took place after TakeOver Toronto from last weekend. And this week it kind of kicked off with the Undisputed Era. So this week's NXT starts with all four members of the Undisputed Era coming out to the ring to celebrate Adam Cole's epic 2 out of 3 falls victory over Johnny Gargano at TakeOver Toronto. Adam says that he would do everything he said he would at TakeOver. He managed to beat Johnny Gargano and he managed to retain his NXT championship. Cole calls himself the greatest NXT champion that has ever lived. Adam Cole said that if there was a Mount Rushmore, it would have Adam Cole's pretty face on it 4 times. Broderick Strong that gets on the mic and tells the fans that the undisputed prophecy didn't come true at TakeOver. Roddy tells us that that was because they got screwed. Roddy went on to explain how Velveteen Dream retained the North American Championship by pinning, not him, but pinning Pete Dunne. And when Dream stops ducking him, he will fulfill his part of the undisputed prophecy and become the new North American champion. Kyle O'Reilly then gets on the microphone and presents us with some footage showing Kyle tagging Bobby Fish prior to the conclusion of their championship match against the Street Profits in Toronto, with the wrong member of the Undisputed Era getting pinned for the Profits to retain their tag team championships. Cole then tells the audience that they are only 2 steps away from fulfilling their prophecy and 2 steps away from making it undisputed. That was a strong way to start this week's episode of NXT. But just as the era were making their way back up the ramp, hoping to go back to the dressing rooms, they were interrupted by the music of the winner of the NXT Breakout Tournament, Jordan Myles. And remember that having won that tournament, Myles gets an opportunity to challenge for an NXT championship of his choosing. So Adam Cole tells Myles that he should go challenge Shayna Baszler or go to challenge the guys in NXT UK or 205 Live because they are not up to the caliber of an Adam Cole baby. Cole then tells Myles that if he wants to make the mistake of challenging him, Cole would turn Myles' career into an undisputed failure. Jordan hands Cole the contract, but drops it to the floor as Cole reaches for it. It looks as though we'll be getting Jordan Myles versus Adam Cole for the NXT Championship on a future episode of NXT. And I think it's announced later on in the episode that we'll see that match in 2 weeks' time. So what's your thoughts on this opening segment? It was quite a long kind of promo segment from the Undisputed Era, and then the appearance of Jordan Myles to cap it off, making it clear what his intentions are, especially with regards to Adam Cole's NXT Championship. Tell us your thoughts on this opening segment, Ashleigh.
I really enjoyed the promo from the whole of the Undisputed Era. Got all their points across. When I watched NXT TakeOver Live, I vaguely had a memory that I definitely saw them Bobby Fish being tagged. Tagging, like one of those things to see something properly there. But when they highlighted in the following week's episodes, TV, it's literally confirmed the evidence. The whole thing with I understand why Jordan Myles wants to cash in his opportunity against Adam Cole, but I feel 2 weeks is kind of soon. I felt they could have kind of used it for possibly the first episode on US TV. Yeah. Obviously, promote the champion and a fresh challenger who possibly have not been introduced predominantly on NXT. So he's been on NXT for, let's say, past 5 weeks or so, but sure. Build up and been title match for a longer time than the short time frame. It could work better for the big brand.
Good point. So that's definitely a match that I'm going to be looking forward to covering in a couple of weeks' time. Then we see Shane Thorne backstage at the WWE Performance Center, and he challenges his fellow Australian countryman Bronson Reed. So Bronson Reed was another standout competitor on the NXT Breakout Tournament, setting up a match between the two of them for later on tonight's episode. Then the first match of the night features Mansoor. So you may remember Mansoor. He won I think it was a 50-man Battle Royal in Saudi Arabia in April, just after WrestleMania. So he won the Battle Royal in front of all of his countrymen. Damian Priest, however, it looked amazing as he made his entrance. Quite an impressive entrance it was too. So they're definitely putting a lot of effort behind Damian Priest and his overall presentation, and his entrance did look absolutely amazing. So to kick off this match, Priest connects with several stiff knee lifts, but Mansoor almost gets an upset fairly early on with a small package and a step-up enziguri before delivering a brilliant tope on Hero and then a slingshot DDT. Priest recovers to put an end to the match with like a razor's edge type maneuver before putting Mansoor out of his misery with his reckoning finishing maneuver for the impressive win. But Mansoor did put up a great fight and managed to deliver some impressive moves, but it wasn't enough, and it wasn't to be against the more experienced NXT newcomer Damian Priest. Give us your thoughts on this match. Like I say, they appear to give Mansoor an opportunity to show what he's capable of. He did get some shots in on Damian Priest, but it looks like Damian Priest is definitely somebody that NXT are looking to push for the future. He's got a good look. He's got a good entrance. He's got some excellent moves. What were your thoughts on this one?
I was overly impressed with the match, especially with how Mansoor was put over and how he was able to get his moves set across. When he had that brief flurry up when he got the sneaky small package and then obviously caught Ben Priest off guard, I thought he was showing off his potential very well. But overall, I think it was a dominant performance by Priest in the end that overall showed his strengths and how he's going to be built for the future. Possibly, I could see him in the future, not the near future, but in the future being a future NXT champion. But I could see him potentially challenge for the NXT North American title in the near future.
Yeah, good shout, good shout. Are they promoting him as a babyface or as a heel? I can't quite make out what side of the fence he sits on at the moment. Can you figure it out?
The only thing I think when he first started off, I'll say he was a face, but I think the match he had with Keith Lee, towards the end of the match, he had more heel tactics than face tactics in that match, on how he won that match. So I'll say it's a weird one. It's like he's either one of three things: either a face, a tweener, or a heel. So it's like one of those things. He's like, you say stuck in the middle as a tweener, but it's like neither side pointing to it either way at the moment. But I'll say he's pointing more to the heel side.
Yeah, I can see that as well. I can see that, but I think for as long as heels get cheered by the fans, that kind of automatically makes them baby faces for that factor alone. But we shall see. He's definitely popular with the fans, nonetheless, and he's got a great look.
There are over the years you have certain factions who are cool heels, like Undisputed Era, and also back in the day when you had like the NWA, they were like a cool heel faction that people were interested in because it was something new and different.
Definitely. Yeah. And then we get our next match, Mia Yim. Now, she was the number one contender, an unsuccessful challenger to Shayna Baszler's NXT Women's Championship in TakeOver Toronto. Here she's facing Vanessa Bourne. So Vanessa Bourne accompanied to the ring by her best friend, Aaliyah. Aaliyah, I'm not sure how you pronounce her name. Aaliyah gets involved. Is it Aaliyah? Yeah, she gets involved early on in this match, grabbing Mia Yim's foot as she comes off the ropes. Vanessa Bourne then gets the first 2 count of the match with a Samoan drop. The former number one contender Mia Yim, she didn't take too long to dispose of Vanessa Bourne in this match after a running cannonball onto Bourne in the corner, followed by her eat to feet finisher for the 1-2-3. However, Mia didn't have too long to celebrate her victory here as Shayna Baszler comes down the ramp with a microphone in hand. Baszler calls Bourne a badass and tells her that she took her to places that she's never been to before at TakeOver Toronto, and she appears to be giving her challenger some props to her former challenger. Baszler tells Yim that they don't have to stand across from one another like enemies when Yim could stand right beside her, and that is it's nice and warm under the dragon's wing. So she's essentially inviting Mia Yim to join the horsewomen here alongside Baszler and Jessamine Duke and Marina Shafir. Mia Yim then declines Baszler's offer and attacks Jessamine Duke and Marina Shafir before being beaten down herself, adding another layer to her rivalry with Shayna Baszler. So she had an opportunity to join the Four Horsewomen, but she declined, and it looks like Mia Yim and Shayna Baszler's feud is going to continue. What's your thoughts on this little segment here, and what's your thoughts on Mia Yim overall? Is she kind of a favourite of yours? I mean, what's your thoughts on her and being a challenger to Shayna Baszler's championship again, it would appear?
With Mia Yim in general, I've enjoyed her work, which she's been on the past 2 Mae Young Classics. She's been a bit hit and miss, really, on the brands recently. She either love or you don't like her. This literally just built up. It's literally there's going to be another match. I could see potentially being a main draw match on possibly on the first episode of NXT on USA. You build up and right where it's been established, haven't it been shown to a wider audience? But hopefully they build up not chemistry as much, but have a bit stronger shown than they did at Toronto.
Yeah. Do you think they're struggling to come up with legit contenders for Shayna Baszler's championship? It's nobody that really stands out at the moment. I mean, you've had a lot of people go up to the main roster. For those of you that may have seen the spoilers, there is somebody from the NXT UK brand that makes an appearance in these tapings to confront Shayna Baszler. But looking at the NXT women's roster, do you think that it's a very strong roster? There doesn't seem to be anybody obvious that jumps out as being a credible contender to Shayna Baszler's championship. What's your thoughts?
Generally, there's only 2 people I feel who theoretically could challenge her, which is Io Shirai and possibly Candice LeRae on the NXT brand. But overall, in the deep talent pool of NXT UK, there's no one really shouting out really, and who will challenge her in the future.
Yeah, it'd be interesting, but I'm sure we'll see in a few weeks' time. That person I alluded to from the NXT UK brand that does confront Shayna Baszler, and how that might kind of bring us into a different direction for the Women's Championship. It's then announced that we will finally be getting the much anticipated rematch between Keith Lee and Dominik Dijakovic in a feud that started earlier on this year, I think over 6 months ago, and was meant to have a blow off over WrestleMania weekend. But injuries put that to rest with both Keith Lee and Dijakovic suffering injuries earlier on in the year. However, a date has been set, and that date is next week when these two athletic, dynamic and charismatic individuals clash 6 months after their original much talked about encounter, and it's going to be playing out next week on NXT, and of course we'll be covering it right here on the Wrestling with Johners podcast. Then we get our next match. Now, it was kind of built up earlier from a backstage confrontation between Bronson Reed and Shane Thorne, and it is, of course, the match between those two individuals. In this match, Bronson Reed takes the match to Shane Thorne with an impressive sit-out spinebuster to start the match before nailing Thorne with a running knee in the corner, before Thorne wriggles his way out of a gorilla press with a rake to the eyes of his much larger opponent. Shane Thorne then gets a close near fall after a running senton in the corner, with the fans getting firmly behind Bronson Reed in this match. Bronson Reed delivers a power slam and a Samoan drop and a senton before delivering two huge avalanche splashes in the corners, sending his opponent to the outside of the ring. Reed then goes to the top turnbuckle to attempt his splash from the top, only for Thorne to react quickly, knocking Reed off the top rope to deliver a running knee strike, with Thorne hooking the leg to get the pinfall victory. And Shane Thorne appears to be picking up a little bit of a winning streak here. So this was a pretty good match. Great to see Shane Thorne develop his character a bit more. And I was really impressed once again with Bronson Reed, quite an athletic, big guy that seems to have the fans on his side. But what was your thoughts on this match between these two?
I felt it was another decent match between the two. It just showed Bronson Reed's obviously it's his third match in front of the Full Sail crowd. Obviously, hopefully have future more matches that build up his credentials on the brand. Shane Thorne seems to be. He's going through all the past competitors through the breakout tournament, trying to pick them off one by one, trying to establish himself as get a name on the brand and try getting possibly higher up onto the card and try to challenge for another title in the future.
Yeah, definitely. But I thoroughly enjoyed this, and it was good to see two relatively fresh faces on this week's NXT. And like I said, when they do go to the USA Network and have that second hour, you'll see more of these type of individuals that don't get a lot of exposure, hopefully get a little bit more TV time in that second hour. Then we get an appearance from the Velveteen Dream, who says that the spotlight is on Roderick Strong, and the next time the two of them meet, it will be dream over for Roddy. We then get an announcement confirming that Jordan Miles will indeed be cashing in his NXT Breakout Tournament contract against Adam Cole for the NXT Championship, and that match will take place in just 2 weeks' time. And after the opening segment of this week's show, it was also confirmed that the Street Profits will be putting their NXT Tag Team Championships on the line against Undisputed Era, and that match will be taking place next week. So on our NXT UK Cardiff Go Home show with Kieran Reid next week, not only will we be getting excited about all the matches that's going to be taking place on Saturday the 31st in Cardiff, but we'll also have the match between the Street Profits and the Undisputed Era to talk about. So I'm looking forward to covering that match next week. And then we get the main event of this week's show, Killian Dain versus Matt Riddle. So this match has been building for a number of weeks now, with Dain setting his sights on Matt Riddle ever since he made his return to NXT, with several brutal ringside attacks, first driving Riddle through the stage, and then at TakeOver Toronto, Dain and Riddle got into an unscheduled impromptu brawl, ended with Dain sending Riddle crashing off the stage through two tables, all leading to this match tonight. Riddle's kind of bandaged up his ribs, obviously still selling the injury from Toronto. However, with Dain being the first man to make his entrance, he waits for his opponent to make his entrance from the stage, but instead Riddle chooses to take a page out of Killian Dain's book and sneak attack Dain from behind to get this match started. And like I say, Riddle is got his ribs taped up from the attack in Toronto. Both men brawl around the ring with Riddle connecting with a flying forearm off the ring steps on the outside. Killian Dain then soon takes control with a brutal attack back inside the ring, with Dain paying attention to Riddle's injured and taped up ribs. Riddle then reverses a vertical suplex from Dain into, and he connects with like a fisherman suplex of his own before nailing an exploder suplex and a Broton for the first 2 count of the match. Riddle then executes a delayed German suplex on the 300-pound monster. However, Dain makes a quick recovery to drop Riddle with a shotgun drop kick and a cannonball into the corner for another 2 count. Riddle then hits a GTS, or he calls it the Bro to Sleep, which is quite an amusing name there, and a take on the Go to Sleep, and a power bomb before connecting with a flash knee strike for another close near fall. And the crowd, they're loving every moment of this match. Dain then sends Riddle crashing into the ring post, sending Riddle to the outside, with Riddle this time avoiding the charge from Dain, and Dain this time colliding with the ring steps. This allows Riddle to attempt to powerbomb, trying to powerbomb Dain onto the steel ring steps. However, Killian Dain reverses the move into what was meant to be a backdrop. Only in like a really scary moment, Riddle lands face first onto the edge of the ring steps. Luckily, Matt Riddle, he wasn't seriously injured from that move, but I'm sure it hurt a hell of a lot. Dain then takes advantage of Riddle being out for the count by adding further punishment with a senton, with Riddle laying on the steel ring steps, followed by a Vader bomb with Riddle laying on the ring steps. Then back inside the ring, Killian Dain connects with a further 3 Vader bombs before hooking Riddle's leg and getting the pin for victory. So this match was brutal in every way possible, as you would expect between these two. Matt Riddle was bleeding from the mouth by the end of it. But it was a fun, certainly wasn't a fun match for the wrestlers, but a fun match for the viewers, and a really hard-hitting match nonetheless. After this match, Matt Riddle kind of recovers and he charges up the ramp and chases after Killian Dain, choosing the closing shot of this show was Matt Riddle attacking Killian Dain from behind. So this match was a brutal it was a brawl more than anything. You couldn't really describe it as a wrestling match. And the kind of the closing few minutes where Killian Dain was attacking Matt Riddle on the ring steps, and then the Vader bombs back inside the ring to conclude this match was pretty hard hitting. What were your thoughts in this match and kind of how it ended, and that backdrop that went wrong as well, with Riddle landing face first on the ring steps, looked pretty brutal. But give us your thoughts on this main event to this week's NXT.
I enjoyed this match very much. I liked Dain's new look, the whole tank top and black jeans, combo with the bin black boots. It was literally been 2 balls going head to head against each other, literally going blow for blow against each other, trying to not out-one each other, but obviously show how dominant they are in the ring. It looked like Riddle had a busted lip or something, because towards the end of the match you could see Riddle had either bit his lip or busted up around the mouth area after the 3rd Vader bomb. But literally, I definitely see that this is not the end of this feud. I can see this potentially going further down the line.
Definitely, I totally agree. And although he did have blood coming out of his mouth, Riddle's mouth looked like a mouth injury, but it also kind of sold possible internal injuries as well from the attack from Dain and the Vader bombs on the steel ring steps and back inside the ring. So I thought the way that it ended looked real, and it looked like they'd had a proper fight. And I fully agree with you. I don't think this is the last we've seen of these two inside a ring. But I think the blow off to their feud could be some sort of stipulation match. I don't know whether they can kind of hold off until TakeOver War Games, which is the next big show on the NXT brand, or possibly they could hold off until September the 18th when they premiere on the USA Network. But I think this is definitely a combination between these two that's got a lot more in store, in my opinion. I think it's going to be another one or two really big matches between Killian Dain and Matt Riddle, but definitely a fantastic way to end this week's NXT. And it's also a fantastic way to end this week's episode of Wrestling with Johners, Ashleigh. So overall, I think definitely a thumbs up episode of NXT UK and a thumbs up episode of NXT. Any kind of closing thoughts on what we've spoken about tonight about these two shows?
Overall, I think they're both solid episodes, have been TV for both NXT brands. Provided good storyline development from each brand as well. And there was definitely some stand-up moments, I think, from both Monsoor and Bronson Reed and their matches on NXT. And I'm trying to think who else. Kelly Ray was quite dominant, and the big match between Jay Strafe and Mark Andrews was very, very good.
Yeah, definitely. Some really standout matches. And like I say every single week, if you're not already watching NXT UK on the WWE Network, or if for some reason you're not already watching NXT on the WWE Network, you need to really catch these two shows. Like I say, NXT UK is a very palatable 1 hour per week, and then of course NXT will be going to 2 hours, but still an excellent show and probably one of the best weekly wrestling shows you're likely to catch anywhere where you watch wrestling. So there we go. But hopefully we've covered NXT and NXT UK enough for you to enjoy those two brands even more and go out and watch them. But thank you very much, Ashleigh, for helping us out with this week's Wrestling with Johners podcast. I really appreciate your help, and we look forward to having you help us out with future episodes at some point in the future. But have you enjoyed yourself this week, Ashleigh?
Yes, I have enjoyed it very much.
Yeah, no, well, thank you. And I look forward to seeing you in Cardiff next Saturday. I'm sure that I'll have an opportunity to catch up with you and Kieran Reid in person. And we look forward to having you back on the podcast at some point in the future. But to the listeners, we hope that you've enjoyed this episode. If you did, please don't forget to hit like, subscribe and shout about this podcast. Tell your friends and tell your family, and keep listening to the Wrestling with Johners podcast for all of your weekly NXT and NXT UK updates. Without you sharing and subscribing to this podcast, we can't continue to grow. So hit like, share and subscribe now. Do it now, people. Don't forget to hit us up on Twitter. Our Twitter handle is @withjohners_pod, on Instagram @wrestlingwithjohners, and don't forget to search for our Facebook community page. Just search Wrestling with Johners, and we will be back next Friday. As I mentioned earlier on, we'll be joined by Kieran Reid to recap next week's NXT and NXT UK. And remember, it's going to be our go-home episode ahead of NXT UK TakeOver Cardiff. So it'll be our predictions episode as well. We'll be looking at each of the matches taking place in Cardiff and running down who we think are going to be the winners and the losers as we get ever closer to the highlight of that show being Walter defending his UK Championship against the first ever UK champion, Tyler Bate, looking to regain his championship. That will be a classic, and I can't wait to preview TakeOver Cardiff next Friday with Kieran. In the meantime, hope you all have a fantastic week, whatever you get up to. And thank you for listening. Take care and speak to you all again soon.